Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is my story, one I never thought I'd share, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. What happened to me changed everything I believed in, about love, trust, and betrayal. So, here it goes. It's funny, isn't it? How one sentence can detonate your entire world. For me, it wasn't even shouted in anger or whispered in secrecy. It was delivered almost casually, with a hopeful look in her eyes, like she was asking me if I wanted pizza for dinner. "We're pregnant," she'd said, placing my hand on her still flat stomach, tears welling up. And I'd felt, well, relief, mostly. We'd been trying for nearly 2 years. 2 long years of ovulation tracking, timed intercourse that felt more like a chore than intimacy, hushed consultations with doctors, and the crushing disappointment each month when her period arrived right on schedule. So yeah, relief was the first wave. Then came the joy, tentative at first, then surging like a tidal wave. I pictured tiny hands, sleepless nights that wouldn't matter, first steps, scraped knees. I saw a future finally clicking into place. But then came the follow-up, the sentence that vaporized the joy and left only the acrid smoke of betrayal. A few weeks later, after the initial glow had faded slightly into the practicalities of prenatal vitamins and doctor's appointments, she sat me down. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the edge of her shirt. "There's something else," she started, avoiding my eyes. "The baby, it might not be yours biologically, but," and here she finally looked up, her gaze pleading, desperate, "I want you to be the father. I want us to raise this baby together. It doesn't change anything, does it? Doesn't change anything?" My world tilted on its axis. The air thickened, making it hard to breathe. It felt like I was underwater, the sound distorted, her face blurry. Not mine. How could it not be mine? We were the ones trying, meticulously, obsessively. Who else could it possibly be? The unspoken question hung heavy between us, a suffocating presence. But deep down, a sickening dread was already coiling in my gut. I knew. Somehow I already knew. And the who was the part that twisted the knife already embedded in my chest. My brother. It had to be him. Sarah and I met in college. Classic story, really. Shared a boring elective, bonded over mutual dislike for the professor, started studying together, and things just happened. She wasn't like the other girls I'd dated. She was grounded, smart, funny in a quirky way, and seemed genuinely kind. We dated for 4 years before I proposed, another year planning the wedding. It was perfect, or so I thought. A white picket fence kind of dream unfolding exactly as planned. We bought a modest house in a decent neighborhood, adopted a goofy golden retriever, settled into a comfortable routine. Life was good, stable, predictable. Maybe, looking back, too predictable. We had our ups and downs, like any couple. Arguments about finances, chores, where to spend the holidays. Normal stuff. Nothing that ever felt like a fundamental crack in our foundation. We communicated, or at least, I thought we did. We talked about having kids early on, both wanting a family. When it didn't happen right away, we didn't panic. But as months turned into a year, then nearly 2, the strain started showing. The spontaneity in our sex life vanished, replaced by calendars and temperature charts. Intimacy became functional. We started snapping at each other more easily. The underlying tension was palpable, even if we didn't explicitly acknowledge it. I suggested counseling once, but Sarah brushed it off, saying we were fine, just stressed. She insisted it would happen when it was meant to happen. I worried about my sperm count. She worried about her fertility. We went through tests. My swimmers were fine, maybe a little sluggish, but definitely viable. Her tests came back clear too. Unexplained infertility, they called it. A frustratingly vague diagnosis that left us feeling helpless. The pressure mounted, externally and internally. Family asking questions, friends announcing their own pregnancies. Each announcement felt like a small stab. We put on brave faces, but the trying process was grinding us down, eroding the easy comfort we once shared. I threw myself into work, maybe as a distraction. Sarah started spending more time with her friends, and sometimes with my brother, Liam, my younger brother by 3 years. We were always close growing up, despite the usual sibling rivalry. He was the charismatic one, the life of the party, while I was more reserved, the responsible older brother. He'd always been a bit of a drifter, bouncing between jobs, relationships, never quite settling down. He lived nearby, and after his last breakup, he started coming over more often. For dinner, to watch the game, sometimes just to hang out. I never thought anything of it. He was family. Sarah seemed to enjoy his company. He could always make her laugh, even when she was feeling down about our fertility struggles. He'd bring over takeout, watch movies with her if I was working late. Looking back, the signs were probably there, flickering like faulty neon lights I chose to ignore. The lingering glances, the slightly too long hugs, the inside jokes I wasn't privy to. I remember one evening, coming home late from the office, exhausted. I walked in to find them sitting close on the sofa, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing. The atmosphere felt charged, intimate. I brushed it off as my own fatigue and paranoia, fueled by the stress of trying to conceive. Why would I suspect my wife and my own brother? It was unthinkable. A betrayal so profound it belonged in trashy television, not my quiet suburban life. Liam often crashed on our couch if he'd had too much to drink or just didn't feel like going back to his empty apartment. It became normal, too normal. He was there for Sarah when I was sometimes too wrapped up in my own disappointment or work stress. He listened. He sympathized. He offered a shoulder to cry on, a shoulder that apparently offered more than just comfort. The sheer naivety I possessed feels staggering now. How could I have missed it? How could I have welcomed the viper into my own home? Let him get close to the person I loved most. The trust one had in both of them was absolute, unquestioning, and they shattered it, utterly. The memory of her asking me to raise his child, my brother's child, replays in my mind like a horror film loop. Her hopeful expression, my initial surge of joy, turned to ash. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a profound, devastating betrayal that targeted the two most important relationships in my life. It was a calculated destruction of everything I held dear. And she still had the audacity to ask me to participate in the lie, to raise their child as my own, pretending nothing happened. The level of disrespect, the sheer callousness, it still takes my breath away. That moment, her words hanging in the air, was the beginning of the end. The end of my marriage, the end of my relationship with my brother, the end of the life I knew. It was the start of a nightmare I'm still trying to fully wake up from. The silence after her confession stretched for an eternity. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman I married, the woman I loved and trusted implicitly, with the person sitting opposite me, calmly suggesting I raise another man's child, my own brother's child, as my own. The room felt like it was closing in. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat echoing the word, betrayal, betrayal, betrayal. Who? I finally choked out, even though the answer was already crystallizing in my mind, cold and sharp. Her eyes flickered away, confirming my worst fear before she even spoke the name. Liam, she whispered, the name barely audible, yet it landed like a physical blow. Liam, my brother. Images flashed through my mind. Liam laughing with Sarah on the couch. Liam clapping me on the back after another negative pregnancy test, assuring me it would happen. Liam crashing on our sofa night after night. Bile rose in my throat. It wasn't a random affair, a drunken mistake with a stranger. It was calculated. It was intimate. It was family. How long? My voice was dangerously quiet. She flinched. It only happened a few times, she stammered. We were both lonely, feeling down. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. A mistake? A few times? The excuses felt like sandpaper on raw nerves. Lonely? We were in this together, the infertility struggle. Or so I thought. Clearly, she'd found comfort elsewhere, in the arms of the one person who should have been completely off limits. A mistake, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. A mistake that resulted in a child you now want me to raise. The absurdity, the sheer audacity of it, was staggering. I love you, she pleaded, tears finally spilling over. This baby, it doesn't have to change us. We can still be a family. Liam, he doesn't want to be involved. He agrees this is the best way. He agrees? They discussed this? They concocted this plan together, deciding my future, the future of their child, without me? The rage that had been simmering erupted. I shot up from the couch, the sudden movement making her jump. Get out, I said, my voice trembling with fury. Get out of my house. Now. She started to protest. More tears, more pleas about love and mistakes, and our future. But I couldn't hear her anymore. The betrayal was too loud, drowning everything else out. It wasn't just the sex, it was the lies, the calculated deception, the fact that it was him. My brother. The person I grew up with, shared childhood secrets with, trusted unconditionally. He had looked me in the eye, day after day, knowing he was sleeping with my wife. They both had. They had sat at my dinner table, shared holidays, pretended everything was normal while carrying this monumental secret. Seeing her try to minimize it, frame it as a mere stumble while simultaneously asking me to live the lie with her for the next 18+ years, was repulsive. I repeated my demand, louder this time, pointing towards the door. Get out. The fight drained out of her then. She saw the finality in my eyes, the absolute destruction of whatever we had. She gathered a few things, sobbing, still trying to make me see her twisted version of reason, but I turned my back. I couldn't look at her. The sound of the front door closing was both the loudest and quietest sound I'd ever heard. The immediate aftermath was a blur of raw pain and disbelief. I spent the first night just sitting in the dark, the silence of the house deafening. The home we built together suddenly felt alien, contaminated. Every object held a memory, now tainted. The photos on the mantelpiece, our wedding, vacations, holidays with family, including Liam smiling beside us, felt like props from a dark comedy. I wanted to smash them all. The next morning, the practicalities hit. Divorce. Telling our families. The sheer, tangled mess of it all. How do you even begin to explain that your wife is pregnant with your brother's child? My first call was to a lawyer. I needed to understand my rights, protect myself. The conversation was cold, clinical, focusing on assets, timelines, and the inevitable paternity test confirmation. It felt surreal discussing the end of my marriage in such detached terms. Then came the hardest part, telling my parents. I drove to their house, my stomach churning. Seeing the confusion, then dawning horror, then gut-wrenching pain on their faces was almost unbearable. My mother wept, not just for me, but for the fracturing of her family, the betrayal between her sons. My father, usually stoic, looked older, defeated. Explaining that Sarah was pregnant, and that Liam was the father, it broke something in them, too. Their disappointment in Liam was palpable, a heavy shroud in the room. They couldn't comprehend how he could do this, how either of them could. They assured me of their support, but the damage was done. The family dynamic was irrevocably changed. Liam. I hadn't spoken to him since Sarah left. He tried calling, texting, leaving voicemails filled with slurred apologies and justifications about loneliness and mistakes. I ignored them all. What could he possibly say? There were no words to fix this. The thought of seeing him, hearing his voice, filled me with a nauseating mix of rage and grief. The brother I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger who had committed the ultimate act of treachery. The emotional toll was immense. Sleep offered little escape, often filled with nightmares. My focus at work disintegrated. Simple tasks felt monumental. Friends noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to share the sordid details. I mumbled excuses about marital problems. The isolation was crushing. Some days, the anger kept me going, a burning fuel. Other days, a profound sadness washed over me, a deep mourning for the life I thought I had, the love I thought was real, the brother I'd lost. Sarah continued to reach out, initially through texts and emails, then through mutual friends, trying to plead her case. Her narrative remained consistent. It was a mistake born of sadness and proximity. She still loved me. The baby shouldn't change our love. We could still make it work. Her denial of the magnitude of her actions, her insistence on salvaging our relationship under these horrific circumstances, baffled me. Did she truly not understand the depth of the wound she and Liam had inflicted? Or did she just not care, as long as she got the stable family life she wanted, regardless of the father's identity? The suggestion that I should just accept it, raise their child, and move on felt like a constant twisting of the knife. It wasn't just infidelity, it was an attempt to erase my reality, my feelings, my very identity within my own marriage and family. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about a fundamental violation of trust and an utter lack of respect. And that's when the anger began to coalesce, sharpening from raw, directionless rage into something colder, more focused. They wanted me to pretend? They wanted to sweep this under the rug and carry on? No, that wasn't going to happen. There had to be consequences. Not just legal, but social, personal. They wouldn't get to destroy my life and walk away unscathed into some twisted version of a happy ending built on lies. The idea of justice, of exposing the truth, started to take root. The weeks following the implosion of my life were a fog of legal consultations, sleepless nights, and the gut-wrenching process of dividing assets. Sarah had moved in with a friend temporarily, but the communication, mostly through lawyers, was strained and focused on the practicalities of separation. The baby remained the elephant in the room, the living proof of the ultimate betrayal. Her lawyer initially tried to push for maintaining the status quo, hinting that acknowledging paternity wasn't necessary, that we could proceed as if the child were mine for alimony and support purposes. It was Sarah's desperate attempt to cling to the original, insane plan. My lawyer, thankfully, shut that down immediately. Paternity had to be established, legally and definitively. Not just for my sake, but for the child's. Living a lie wasn't an option. The anger I felt towards Sarah was immense, a constant, burning rage. But the anger towards Liam was different. It was deeper, colder, laced with a profound sense of loss. He hadn't just betrayed me as a husband, he betrayed me as a brother. He'd violated a sacred bond, something I thought was unbreakable. He continued his attempts to contact me, shifting from apologetic voicemails to slightly more defensive texts suggesting I was overreacting, that these things happen. That only fueled my resolve. They clearly didn't grasp the gravity of their actions, or worse, they did and simply didn't care about the devastation they caused. They seemed to think that if they just ignored the fallout, it would eventually dissipate. They were wrong. My revenge, as some might call it, wasn't about plotting elaborate schemes or seeking petty vengeance. It was about truth and consequences. They had built their affair and subsequent plan on secrecy and lies, banking on my silence to maintain their facade. My justice would be simply to turn on the lights and let everyone see the ugliness they tried to hide. The first step was ensuring the legal framework reflected reality. I insisted on a DNA test as soon as the baby was born. There would be no ambiguity, no room for future manipulation. Liam would be named the father on the birth certificate. He would have the legal rights and, more importantly, the legal responsibilities that came with it. No more hiding behind me. The bigger stage for unveiling the truth was our families and shared social circle. Sarah and Liam seemed to be operating under the assumption that I would keep the sordid details quiet to avoid embarrassment. Perhaps they projected their own shame onto me. But I wasn't the one who needed to be ashamed. They were. My parents already knew, and while heartbroken, they stood firmly by my side. Telling Sarah's parents was another circle of hell I had to navigate. I met them for coffee, my hands shaking slightly. They adored me, saw me as the stable, loving husband their daughter deserved. Shattering that image, explaining that their daughter was pregnant not by me, but by my brother, was excruciating. They were shocked, horrified, and deeply embarrassed. Sarah had apparently fed them a vague story about us needing space. The truth hit them hard. There were tears, apologies on her behalf, and a quiet, steely anger directed towards their daughter and Liam. They assured me they didn't condone her behavior in any way. That conversation, while painful, was necessary. It removed another layer of the secrecy Sarah and Liam relied upon. The final act, the one that truly brought everything into the open, happened at what should have been a neutral family gathering, a cousin's engagement party. It wasn't planned as a grand reveal, but the opportunity presented itself, and I took it. Sarah and Liam, incredibly, decided to attend. Separately, of course, maintaining the fiction that they were merely sympathetic friends supporting me through a tough time. Liam even had the gall to approach me, hand outstretched, a mournful look on his face, asking how I was holding up. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. That was the breaking point. I didn't cause a scene, not exactly. But when my aunt, noticing Sarah across the room and unaware of the situation, cheerfully asked me when the baby was due and how excited I must be, I didn't lie. I didn't deflect. I looked her calmly in the eye and said, loud enough for those nearby, including Liam who was still hovering, to hear clearly, actually, Aunt Carol, Sarah and I are separating. She's pregnant, yes, but the baby isn't mine. It's Liam's. The silence that fell over our corner of the room was instantaneous and absolute. Faces turned. Jaws dropped. Liam went pale, stammering something incoherent before practically fleeing the venue. Sarah, who had been chatting animatedly nearby, froze, her face crumpling as multiple pairs of eyes swiveled towards her, then towards her belly, then towards the door Liam had just bolted through. There was no shouting, no drama from my end. Just the quiet, devastating weight of the truth, laid bare for everyone to see. The whispers started immediately. The pitying looks directed at me, the shocked and disgusted looks towards where Sarah stood, suddenly very alone. She made her excuses and left shortly after, head down. It wasn't explosive revenge, but it was effective. It stripped away their narrative, their ability to control the story. It forced them to face the social consequences of their actions within the community and family that mattered to them. They couldn't hide anymore. The truth was out, undeniable and stark. And in that moment, amidst the wreckage, I felt a strange sense of release. The burden of their secret was no longer mine to carry. The fallout from the engagement party revelation was swift and decisive. The carefully constructed wall of silence and plausible deniability that Sarah and Liam had hoped would protect them crumbled instantly. Calls and messages flooded in, from shocked relatives, from concerned friends who finally understood the vague marital problems I'd alluded to. There was an outpouring of support for me, coupled with near-universal condemnation for Sarah and Liam. Their betrayal wasn't just against me. It resonated as a violation of fundamental family and ethical boundaries in the eyes of our shared community. Liam became persona non grata at family events. Even those relatives who tried to maintain neutrality found it difficult. His presence created an unbearable tension. My parents, while deeply saddened by the rift, made it clear that his actions were unacceptable and had severely damaged their trust. He reportedly became withdrawn, defensive, complaining about being treated unfairly, still seemingly unable or unwilling to fully grasp the magnitude of his betrayal. He tried playing the victim, blaming loneliness, alcohol, and even Sarah's supposed manipulation, but few were buying it. His charisma, which had always served him well, couldn't charm its way out of this. Sarah faced a similar social exile. Friends pulled away, invitations dried up. Her parents, while supporting her through the pregnancy as best they could, were deeply disappointed and made no secret of it. The mistake narrative she clung to rang hollow. People saw it for what it was, a profound breach of trust with devastating consequences. Her attempt to secure a comfortable, ready-made family life by asking me to raise Liam's child was viewed not just as naive, but as deeply manipulative and cruel. The divorce proceeded, expedited by the now undeniable circumstances. With paternity legally established via DNA test after the baby, a boy, was born, the terms were straightforward. Liam was legally obligated to pay child support. Sarah didn't get the alimony she might have hoped for had the circumstances been different. The infidelity, particularly its incestuous and deceptive nature, weighed heavily against her in the settlement negotiations regarding shared assets. I made sure I was treated fairly, but I didn't seek to punish her financially beyond what was just. My focus was on disentangling myself cleanly and completely. Seeing the baby for the first time was complicated. Sarah had, through her lawyer, tentatively asked if I wanted to meet him. A part of me, the part that had desperately wanted a child for so long, was curious. But looking at him, knowing his parentage, knowing the pain and deceit surrounding his very existence, was difficult. He was an innocent in all this, yet an undeniable symbol of the wreckage. I saw traces of Liam in his features, a resemblance that felt like a fresh stab wound. I wished him well, sincerely. I hoped he would have a good life, loved and cared for. But I knew I couldn't be a part of it. Raising him would be a constant, painful reminder of the betrayal. It wouldn't be fair to him, or to me. My relationship with Liam remains non-existent. I haven't spoken to him directly since that day I threw Sarah out. I see him occasionally at obligatory large family gatherings, like funerals, but we exist in separate orbits, a gaping chasm between us. The easy camaraderie, the shared history, the brotherly bond, it's all gone, replaced by scar tissue and a profound sense of loss for the brother I thought I had. Maybe someday, years down the line, some form of distant civility might be possible, but the trust, the closeness, that's irreparable. My life now looks very different from the one I envisioned just a couple of years ago. The divorce forced me to rebuild, starting with selling the house, our house, which held too many ghosts. I moved into a new apartment, closer to the city center. It felt like shedding a skin, painful but necessary. I focused on work, reconnected with old friends who weren't part of the shared life with Sarah, and tentatively started exploring hobbies I'd let slide during my marriage. Therapy was crucial. Talking through the anger, the grief, the feelings of worthlessness that inevitably follow such a profound betrayal helped me process the trauma and regain my footing. It helped me understand that their actions were a reflection of their own flaws, their own weaknesses, not a measure of my value. The justice I achieved wasn't about making them suffer, though their social standing certainly took a hit. It was about refusing to participate in their lie. It was about reclaiming my own narrative and ensuring the truth, in all its ugly detail, saw the light of day. It was about establishing boundaries and demanding accountability. It denied them the easy way out they so desperately wanted, forcing them to confront the reality of their choices. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing they didn't get away with it, that consequences are real. It doesn't erase the pain, but it helps. Healing hasn't been a linear process. There are still days when the anger flares up, days when a wave of sadness hits unexpectedly. Seeing families, especially fathers playing with their young sons, can still trigger a pang of what might have been. The phantom limb of the family I thought I was building still aches sometimes. But those moments are becoming less frequent, less intense. I learned a harsh lesson about trust, about naivety, about looking closer at the foundations of a relationship instead of just admiring the facade. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are capable of inflicting the deepest wounds. But I also learned about my own resilience. I survived something that felt unsurvivable. I faced the ugliest truths and chose not to be defined by them. I refused to let their betrayal poison my future or my capacity for connection, though I approach relationships with more caution now, my eyes wider open. The desire for a family is still there, but it's tempered with the knowledge that it needs to be built on honesty and genuine mutual respect, not just shared dreams and comfortable routines. I'm dating again, slowly, carefully. It's different now. I'm more attuned to red flags, more willing to trust my gut instincts. The experience didn't make me bitter, exactly, but it made me wiser, more discerning. I value honesty and integrity above almost everything else now. The house with the picket fence is no longer the dream. A life built on truth, even if it's messier and less conventional, feels far more valuable. Life threw me the most brutal curveball imaginable, orchestrated by the two people I trusted most. It shattered my world, broke my heart, and tested my limits. But I picked up the pieces. I didn't let them win by letting their actions destroy my spirit. I chose truth, I chose self-respect, and I chose to move forward, carrying the scars but not letting them dictate my path. The future is uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it feels like mine again. Looking back, I realize I lost a part of myself, but I also found something stronger. If you've ever been betrayed, know this: you're not alone, and healing is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Until next time, take care of yourself.